Hello everyone, and welcome back into another video. I'm FranklinTurtz, and I'm your internet turtle. The Warriors Den for Year 9 Season 3 has happened, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. So without getting too cross, let's progress on with the video. You see what I did there? As I've done before, and this is more so for any new folks watching my content, I like to preface that I play devil's advocate a lot with For Honor and with most things in life. I love the game, but I also always have my fair share of criticisms as well. I try to be as realistic and unbiased as I can be, as I figure this is the best and most level-headed way of discussing things taking place within the game to further dialogue instead of falling into one of the two categories of either being a shill or blatantly toxic for no reason. Feel free to leave comments down below, as I love differing points of view and getting your hot takes. Okay, but now on to the actual den. First up is the newest hero skin, Kyoshin. Wait, but sorry, I meant Kiyoshi. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I meant Lady Saori, I think is how you say it. Taking a good look at the skin, I can't help but feel a little underwhelmed. Now, it isn't bad per se, but if I had to rank it, I'd definitely say it's more leaning towards the discount Sunburnt Venom skin that Raider has with the Bolthorn skin. It basically just looks like some new armor that Nobushi could find on the battlefield like normal. Now, I don't mind more realistic or grounded looking hero skins, but for the amount of money or steel, and whatever tickles your fancy, that they're asking for from the community, you would expect something a bit more transformative than this, something a bit more impactful. I will say though, discounting all of that, I think that easily the best part of the skin is her eyes. They did really well with the effect, and apparently the more damage you take in a fight, the more that the eyes will essentially kind of creep out and bleed, and the effect will extend more. I think it's really neat, and I hope they do this with more hero skins in the future. Next we get into cross-progression. Overall, it sounds pretty simple with how they'll be executing it. Your accounts with all their content will merge into one account across any and all platforms you play on. When you first load up the game, you'll be prompted with a pop-up screen. The devs said it, and I will too. Please read the whole screen carefully, as you could risk enabling it incorrectly or losing things. Now, as far as my opinions on it, I do think it's a big quality of life W for the game and the community, and it'll definitely aid in bringing some folks back to the game. And the game is very old, with well-known issues with its spaghetti code, making certain things harder to implement. But at the same time, I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. They made a ton of fanfare and a big deal out of a feature that overall is pretty widely used in almost all online multiplayer PvP games and has been for years now. The devs brought crossplay into the game in 2022, and I cannot fathom how it took another 3 whole years to bring in cross-progression. I am not a game dev, so I don't know the inner workings of how it's implemented and programmed. But with crossplay bringing the solid foundation for them that they probably need to implement cross-progression, it's kind of surprising that it took as long as it did. The feature definitely is a good thing to bring into the game, but I don't see it as this shining star that the marketing has made it out to be. At the end of the day, it isn't new content, it's just a basic feature. You also have to factor in that this isn't as universal of a W as, say, for example, removing a problematic bug, or buffing or nerfing certain heroes that everyone complains about. This win is specifically for those that have played on multiple platforms. Players like myself who really only play on one platform, for me for example it was the PS4 for the longest time, and then I finally changed to a PS5 about a year or two ago, we see absolutely zero tangible benefit from this. Long story short, I'm glad that it's in, and I'm very happy for those who benefit greatly from it, and have been wanting it for a while, but I don't see it as something as crazy as how they've been promoting it, and it absolutely took way longer than it should have to implement it. Following this, they showed us the limited time event game mode. I'm going to cliff notes this really easily for you guys. It's basically just the final stage of Breach. They did mention that everyone's move speed, revive speed, etc. is increased, so it's basically just going to be a turbo style version of the final act in every Breach match when there's a boss at the end. They also completely disabled feats. We're going to have to try it out and see what we think, but it is definitely intriguing. They then started doing a big few segments on behind the scenes stuff with Warriors Dens, as well as some celebratory stuff such as a trivia game and a trip down memory lane for past Warriors Dens. This was their 200th Warriors Den stream, and I definitely congratulate them as that's an insane accomplishment, especially for a game as old as For Honor. And it was cool seeing features such as how they edit their videos and content, especially as a content creator myself, and get to see them goof off a little and be silly. However, I had issues with this as well. There were moments where it felt like they just kept talking, and talking, and talking, and it felt very drawn out. Also on its face, a lot of this stuff is much more niche in value for the common viewer or player. Folks care a lot more about the new content, patch notes, and balancing rather than this stuff, and by putting all of this smack dab in the middle of the stream, you essentially are forcing your audience to watch it so they can eventually get to the main meat of balancing changes and features. My suggestion is to reorder the format of Warriors Dens. Put the actual new content and balancing discussions first and foremost. That way, folks are able to tune in and are able to get all the info they want up front. Then after all that, do the more niche or silly behind the scenes stuff like that afterwards. The community then has the choice afterward to stay and enjoy that extra stuff that they'll feature for us, or they can leave if they're busy or don't have a ton of time to watch the entire den. I get that it was a big milestone and celebrations were in order. That's not my issue at all. You know, they very much, I'm very happy that they were able to celebrate. It is definitely a celebration. But at the end of the day, people have busy lives, and it simply doesn't make logical sense to do a trivia game or other more superficial stuff before something really important such as the balancing changes. Speaking of which, we then moved on to the testing grounds. And as a reminder, the testing grounds are only out for a little bit. So if you're curious about any of these changes they're trying, go in and test them out and report what you think. This time they're focusing on 4 separate heroes and their feats. First is Centurion. His tier 1 is a passive that makes it so the final hit in his 3 bash chain when he does his GBs on someone will unbalance them, aka putting them on their ass. His tier 2 is another passive that reduces enemies' attack and increases your team's move speed if you land an equals talent, which I believe is his dodge forward heavy. I don't really play him that much, to be honest. His tier 3 is still Pugio, but with an added effect that if you follow up with a kick, it unbalances them. Finally, his tier 4 is Phalanx 2.0, making it so when you activate, it not only gives a shield, but it also cleanses any negative status effects. This includes things like Warmonger corruption, different debuffs, etc. The jury's kind of out. I'm theorizing that it might actually cleanse if you're on fire as well, but I don't know if that's technically counted as a debuff or not, but I'm kind of following the same logic with Warmonger's corruption, that it should cleanse that as well, but we'll have to see. It seems like they're really doubling down on his power with knocking people to the ground, and being a good support and setup for his team. Sent and Yorm are already best buds, but in these testing grounds, they're going to be lovers for sure. Second is Peacekeeper. Her tier 1 makes use of her crossbow to deal direct bleed damage. They stated that it's less damage than when they tried it previously. Her tier 2 makes her tankier than you would think for an assassin, as if she hits a bleeding target, you gain a defense buff. Her tier 3 is basically the same as before, but if you hit a bleeding target, you can reduce its cooldown. And finally, her tier 4 is basically a passive fear itself. I believe she had a lot of this stuff when they first put her in the testing grounds, but they did make a point that it's not nearly as strong as the actual fear itself. So it's still strong, especially for being a passive, but it's not going to be as detrimental to the enemy team as a regular fear itself would be. They want to seem to push her even more into this relentless mosquito bleed machine, and I definitely think that these ideas could work. I still think she does suffer from a lack of an opener, but if you're really good with her, you should be fine. I do still get a little wary about that passive fear itself. It still sounds really, really strong, especially because she doesn't have to really press anything for it. You just kind of walk around and you assist people. But I guess it kind of also plays off her whole, the way that she works in 4v4s, and this is with very limited knowledge from me. I don't really play too much PK, but she's very much kind of a follow-up character to help with confirms and stuff like that. So she normally is going to skirt on the edges of fights anyway. So this kind of doubles down on that playstyle. Third, we have Shinobi. Their tier 1 makes it so instead of separating early from his sickle rain for optimal fights and frame advantage, you can complete the sickle rain and get an attack buff. Their tier 2 is basically cheaper Nuke Kubi. The devs acknowledged that it took a while to get to it in its previous state, and that the folks didn't really see that much of a benefit. The bigger aspect is that this completely replaces the shotgun shooting stars that Shinobi is very well known for, so I'm just going to take that away from you real quick, sorry buddy. Their tier 3 lets you gain health when hitting opponents. Simple, pretty simple. And their tier 4, never mind. Okay, here you can have all of these back right now. We're basically just giving Shinobi multiple shotguns to just surround themselves with. I'm fine with all of these except that tier 4. That tier 4 sounds so broken, but it's going to depend on how much damage it actually does. If it works the same as the regular tier 2 star throw that he has, the shooting stars, if it works like that, but it's the double wave, if there's people surrounding you like even remotely close by, they're gonna get absolutely shredded. Can you imagine like one Shinobi versus 4 people and then they just pop the tier 4 and everybody dies around them? Finally, we have Berserker. Their tier 1 is a simple axe throw, and if they get hit, it reduces its cooldown. It really seems, the more I'm reading this, that they're really leaning into doing these moves, like you either do moves or you get hit, and then by either doing the moves or getting hit, you're reducing the cooldown of a certain feat or something like that. It's an interesting mentality, and I'm curious to see how far they take this. They seem like they really like that idea. Their tier 2 is a passive, where if they get hit, it increases damage and move speed. Their tier 3 allows you to never be tired and get enhanced lights for a bit. And their tier 4, you are essentially immortal. They did note that in the prior iteration, back in the other testing grounds, it was 20 seconds, and that was way too long. Now they made it 10 seconds for Zerk, and honestly, I'm fine with that. It's a little more time for Zerk to go crazy on the battlefield without it lasting too long. 20 seconds is absolutely insane to be immortal. 10 seconds is still crazy, but cutting it in half like that is definitely going to help a ton. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe 10 seconds is around the amount of time that revenge lasts as well. So it's effectively another like pseudo revenge for them. So we'll have to see like if, at least in the testing grounds, if Zerk is going to be too stally with it and just never die. We'll have to see, They seem to really want to encourage Zerk to get hit and really muscle through with their hyper armor, which obviously is their entire playstyle, so it makes a lot of sense. Overall, I'm very intrigued with some of these feat ideas. Some of them sound incredibly insane, but that's just the nature of testing grounds. At the end of the day, it's just kind of their playground to test different ideas that the team has. And none of this is guaranteed to come into the live game, so I wouldn't worry too much. Just play it through a little bit, see what you think, send it in to them, and hopefully they'll be able to figure it out. Oh, and the very last thing, they are fiddling around with revenge a little bit. Essentially what this means is that it's going to be less punishing for bad players, or players that don't really understand revenge fully, and that revenge gain will be lower. I'm a little wary about this, as revenge as a concept is touch and go between being either way too strong or absolutely useless, depending on who you're facing and their different skill levels. So this is something we'll have to keep an eye on. And lastly, we move on to the patch notes. Before going into specifics, they did make an announcement that they finally fixed the bug with Virtuosa of being able to dodge minions with their posture. This made her borderline unstoppable in any minion lane, so I'm very glad that they fixed it, and it should bring her down a notch. They aren't making any other changes to her just yet, but I think even just with this bug fix, she should be a lot fairer to fight. But now we move on to the actual hero notes. Our 2 swords, 1 man, Aramusha is up first. He's just getting his heavy attack damage reduced, which kind of makes sense as he was putting up some insane numbers in fights. Next is Goki. They're increasing the damage and reducing the stamina cost of his headbutt. After nerfing it so it didn't chain on miss, this is a balancing change and will allow Goki to be a little more threatening with the headbutt specifically. You'll probably see more Goki sliding around the battlefield now with that headbutt animation. Next is Gladiator. They're making his skewer harder to parry and react to. This is a huge change for Glad, as typically a lot of the time, skewer is one of those things where if it does land, it's an insane amount of damage and setup, but it just simply doesn't land that much. If you do it from deflect, that's one thing, but the straight up skewer is very readable, so this allows it to be used more. Now, if this is true, and it actually is going to be able to be used more, they're definitely going to have to tune down the damage of the skewer, because you cannot have Glads just be using it constantly and have that same amount of ludicrous damage and punishability that he has right now. That would be bonkers. Next we have Shinobi. They buffed the Sickle Rain in that it now generates less revenge. This allows them to utilize it more in gank scenarios without fear of feeding too much revenge off of just one move. Finally, we have our resident turtle man, Conqueror, Ra Incarnate. He has finally received a roll catcher via the front dodge heavy. The move also works like any other heavy he throws, and then it can start to chain, he can hard feint it, or he could soft feint it into a full block. Thank the Lord they finally put this in. Conk has always been a more defensive hero, and not necessarily designed to chase folks down, but now they'll be able to stop folks from just rolling away out of any of their pressure, or at the very least keep up with them a bit better. Massively good change for sure, and I'm very excited to pick up the flail and shield more. Not to mention, the animation's absolutely hilarious, but I can also tell that a lot of work went into it. I love it. I just love it so much. I'm going to be feinting my unblockables into this dodge forward heavy so much. It's going to be a good time. But overall, what are my thoughts on this Warriors Den? Honestly, I think it was a bit on the lower side of things. Obviously, there's some really good and nice things to see in here, but I absolutely think that the Nobu skin isn't really their best. Cross-progression is great, but not as groundbreaking of a feature as they make it seem. As well as the formatting of the den just in general made it seem way longer and more drawn out than it needed to be. I join in celebrating with the devs and their accomplishments with the dens, but you have to think of the community and what's best for them, and the ordering of what was featured was a blatant misstep. I really hope someone on the dev team sees this video and knows how much I care about the game and the media surrounding it. Reordering the den to keep the most important stuff first is key, so folks can get the best experience overall. But hey, that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, comment, and sharing with a buddy. I'm FranklinTurtz, and I'm your Internet Turtle. Stay turtly, stay awesome, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye!